In the afternoon of August 26, 2011, we decided to stop paying other people to kill animals for us to eat.
We decided to stop exploiting animals for clothing, entertainment, testing, and all other purposes. We decided to live vegan.
The only reason we made that decision is because we watched a video on YouTube. That video was called Best Speech You Will Ever Hear by Gary Orlovsky.
Now, if he was just vegan in his own private life and he didn't travel around the United States giving that talk at universities to students, that video would never have been made and he would never have helped so many people like us go vegan.
We're vegan because he was active, and this is what we want to talk about today, the importance of being an active vegan.
Now, being vegan and not participating in the exploitation of and violence towards animals is great, but being vegan is not the most we can do. It's the least we can do. Because actively raising awareness and trying to stop the exploitation and violence in some way is what the victims need.
Consider this often used example. You see a man needlessly beating a dog in the street. You have three choices. Choice number one, you could say, hey, that looks like fun, grab a stick and join the man in beating the dog. I'm sure we could all agree that's the morally wrong choice to make. Well, that's like living as a non-vegan and paying someone else to needlessly kill animals on your behalf. Choice number two, you could choose not to join the man in beating the dog. That's like just living vegan. You're simply no longer participating in the exploitation of and violence towards animals. Choice number three, you could choose to take some form of action to try to stop the man beating the dog. I'm sure we could all agree that's the morally right thing to do. Well, that's like being an active vegan or a vegan activist. So, in order to be morally consistent, if we think that taking action to stop the needless exploitation of and violence towards a dog is the right thing to do, then taking action to stop the needless exploitation of and violence towards other animals must also be the right thing to do.
To take this example of the dog one step further, if I was the victim, if someone dominated my life, exploited and mutilated my body, and intended to slit my throat and chop my head off, would I be satisfied with people simply not participating in the exploitation and the violence? Or would I want people to stand up and try and fight and stop the exploitation and the violence? What would you want if you were the victim?
When we put ourselves in the position of the victim, it's very easy to see why being an activist is so important. The challenge still remains, however, to get more vegans to become activists. We've noticed that the aversion many vegans have to becoming activists is as strong as the aversion many non-vegans have to becoming vegan.
Perhaps the best example of this is vegan activists being blocked from vegan Facebook groups for posting vegan activist content.
In our opinion, the root cause of this aversion is a fear of judgment by others. Many non-active vegans fear judgment from non-vegans, and they don't want to be seen as pushy, annoying, militant, extreme vegans.
We remind not active vegans that they already demonstrated the courage to withstand judgment from non-vegans when they went vegan. Therefore, all they have to do is draw on that very same courage to become an activist.
We also remind not active vegans that just as every vegan ever will tell you that going vegan was the best thing they ever did and they only wish they'd done it sooner, every vegan activist will tell you that becoming a vegan activist was the best thing they ever did and they only wish they'd done it sooner.
As Albert Einstein said, those who have the privilege to know have the duty to act. And as vegans, we all have the privilege of knowing how animals are exploited. Therefore, we all have a duty to act.
History has shown us that veganism alone will not be enough to achieve animal rights. Human slavery was not abolished by some members of society simply not owning slaves. It took action by abolitionists.
Women's rights were not won simply by some members of society not being sexist. It took action by women's rights activists.
Civil rights were not won by some members of society simply not being racist. It took action by civil rights activists.
The gay rights that have been won were not won by some people in society simply not being homophobic. It took action by gay rights activists.
Similarly, animal rights will not be won by some members of society simply not being speciesists or simply being vegan and no longer participating in the exploitation of and violence towards animals. It's going to take action by animal rights activists.
The day we went vegan, we sent an email to everybody in our contacts list, telling them about this life-changing and life-saving information that we just came across, and that we felt a moral obligation to share it with them all. Well, let's just say we had a mixture of responses to that email, but the main thing we heard was silence. The majority of people did not react or respond to that email.
That was just over 7.5 years ago, and we haven't stopped speaking up for animals since. Now, we can advocate for animals in many, many different ways. We always encourage people to veganise their jobs, skills, interests, hobbies, passions in any way that they can.
Some examples of things that people have veganised include documentaries, books, magazines, speeches, websites, podcasts, social media, music, art, dance, holiday tours, meal delivery services, food trucks, cafes, restaurants, apps, essays, school debates, and so much more.
We all have a circle of influence, and it's very important that we each influence it to the best of our abilities. We may each just be a drop in the ocean, but what is an ocean but a multitude of drops? One to change a few to change the many, many to change the world. It all starts with one.
Take us, for example. 5 years ago, nobody knew who we were as we nervously made our very first YouTube video. We were sitting in the backyard using a very old laptop that was balancing on a shoebox, and we had noisy aeroplanes flying overhead, and we were arguing with each other about the script and how it should be delivered, not even knowing if anybody would watch the video.
We never would have imagined that 5 years later we'd have more than 22 million views on our YouTube channel, with millions more on our Facebook and Instagram, and be invited to speak in Israel on animal rights activism.
Just in the almost 8 years that we've been vegan, we've noticed huge changes in the vegan movement. Most importantly, the time between someone becoming vegan and becoming an activist is getting less and less.
That's because social media has popularised and normalised activism to such a degree that being vegan and being active is becoming more and more synonymous.
In fact, as social media influencers, we see our role as not only to normalise veganism, but perhaps even more importantly, to normalise vegan activism. Because speaking up against injustice towards our non-human animal cousins is the normal thing to do, even if the oppressors will try to label activists as pushy, annoying, militant and extremist.
Participation in animal rights activism has experienced exponential growth in recent years, driven primarily by social media and spearheaded by 3 worldwide grassroots animal rights organisations: Anonymous for the Voiceless, the Save Movement, and Direct Action Everywhere, or DXE.
Of course, there are many other groups around the world doing similar activism. However, these 3 organisations have been the most successful in terms of global participation.
Anonymous for the Voiceless has popularised Cube of Truth style demonstrations involving showing slaughterhouse footage in public and having outreach conversations with non-vegans in the street. Through thousands of their powerful Cube of Truth demonstrations in around 1,000 cities, they've convinced hundreds of thousands of people to take veganism seriously, and millions more have watched outreach conversations posted on social media.
The roles of people holding the screens and the outreaches in these demonstrations are equally important, codependent, and both roles enhance each other. And the role of holding the screen has provided a perfect, accessible entry point into activism for many first-time activists.
For those people who want to do outreach, some tips that we can offer. Never underestimate the power of asking questions. Using the Socratic method of asking probing questions to lead non-vegans to the vegan conclusion is more effective than simply telling them directly what you want to communicate. And that's because if they feel like they've reached the conclusion themselves, they're more likely to embrace the message.
As an outreacher, we should not allow ourselves to be put on the back foot and have to defend why we're vegan. We shouldn't need to justify why we're not participating in the violence. We need to turn that conversation around so that non-vegans are explaining why they are participating in the violence. For example, I was recently outreaching a non-vegan and I was explaining to her that all egg-laying hens are eventually slaughtered for their flesh once their egg production declines. And she asked me, why are you not okay with that? Now, I could have responded by telling her why I'm not okay with that, but instead, I asked her why she was okay with that. Now, her answer helped me to understand why she was okay with this violence and allowed me as the outreacher to break through that barrier and help her to take veganism more seriously.
Put yourself back in your pre-vegan shoes and explain things from a place of understanding to show that you can relate to where the person currently is. Try the feel, felt, found technique. It goes like this. I understand how you feel about bacon. I too felt the same way about bacon, until I found out that bacon is produced by lowering pigs into a gas chamber to render them unconscious, slitting their throats and chopping their heads off. So now I just eat vegan bacon.
We know that many vegans are nervous about outreaching because they're worried that they'll say the wrong thing. But there is no right or wrong way to say, stop killing innocent animals. It just needs to be said. There may be more effective ways to communicate the message and plant the seeds to ensure that they sprout later on. But even then, the most strategic, compassionate and respectful approach can still be met with resistance and anger.
So we encourage vegans to learn the rebuttals to the main carnist excuses, and yet not to overthink their outreach. Waiting to become the perfect outreacher with all the right answers before having a conversation will mean that you'll never have a conversation, because there is no such thing as a perfect conversation. And the animal simply cannot wait for vegans to master all the answers to all the questions we'll face.
Just speak from the heart. Speak with conviction and passion. Speak with strength and compassion. But most importantly, speak for the animals the same way you would want someone to speak for your life. Learn from other outreachers, be inspired by people you watch online perhaps, but don't try to sound like anyone else. It's important that you find your own unique style and voice. Because as an outreacher, when you deliver that message as being authentically yourself, it's so much more effective.
One of the things we've observed regarding cubes of truth is that size makes a difference. At the Animal Liberation Conference in May last year, we took part in what was then the world's largest ever cube of 100 people holding screens of slaughterhouse footage and signs of truth, plus many more outreaches. We filled an entire plaza.
At the debrief, many outreachers, us included, commented that they received fewer excuses and less resistance than at their regular smaller cubes. We concluded that this was because of Human Psychology 101. People want to fit in with the majority.
When non-vegans walked into that plaza, perhaps for the first time ever, they were in the minority and vegans were in the majority. And of course, the human tendency is to do whatever the majority of other people are doing.
Now, although that didn't mean that every single non-vegan wanted to instantly go vegan, unfortunately, it did mean that they were less inclined to go against the majority with feeble excuses, because they could see over 100 people from all different demographics were able to be vegan.
Having 100 vegans standing in a queue also meant that feeble excuses like, but we need protein, could easily be dismissed. Clearly, none of us were dying from a protein deficiency.
And finally, non-vegans could see that over 100 people cared enough about animal rights to take action in that demonstration. And it put the issue of animal rights in the minds of non-vegans, perhaps even forcing them to reconsider their own position on animal rights.
So if more activists equals fewer excuses and less resistance from non-vegans, then we could help create a vegan world much faster if every cube had at least 100 people. Now, of course, you should do a cube even if there's just one of you. And yet, there are more than enough vegans in most cities to have at least a 100-person cube every time.
The SAVE movement has over 600 chapters in more than 60 countries and bears witness at vigils to animals on transport trucks outside slaughterhouses, as well as on farms and other locations of animal exploitation.
Activists try to stop trucks transporting animals for a few minutes to bear witness and offer the animals some love and compassion before their execution. But also to document what they see and share it on social media to help non-vegans see the truth and make a change.
Is this effective? Well, the animal agriculture industry is telling us yes. You see, the most powerful weapon we have as activists lives in our pockets. This simple tool is what will help us bring down the animal agriculture empire.
Industry is so desperate to stop activists from documenting what happens to animals and to keep the truth hidden from consumers that many slaughterhouses try to stop activists from bearing witness.
Although some slaughterhouses do cooperate with activists and have agreed to work with SAVE groups to safely stop trucks for a few minutes, many slaughterhouses hold trucks back or reroute trucks or even call the police in an attempt to stop activists from documenting the animals and posting what they see on social media.
Many truck drivers will try to intimidate activists by speeding up as they approach the slaughterhouse. Again, the industry is so desperate to keep their evil actions hidden that they would even risk injuring or potentially running over activists.
The industry's response to activists at vigils tells us a great deal. Social media is where we can reach consumers, educate them, and help change consumer demands.
And we must use social media while we still can. YouTube, Facebook and Instagram already censor slaughterhouse and other graphic animal rights content, so there's no telling how much longer we'll be allowed to share the truth. The time to take advantage of the online freedom we have left is now.
To be honest with you, many years ago we hated the idea of social media and we didn't even want to get on Facebook. But two things changed our mind.
If one of the first YouTube videos that we ever watched turned us vegan, then this is a very powerful tool that clearly works.
Number two, we noticed everybody was on their devices, watching and scrolling and watching and scrolling. And we said to each other, well, they're watching something, so we might as well get on this thing and they can watch us talk about veganism. So we're on social media not because we like it, but because it works.
It's the most effective and efficient tool that we know of that directly reaches the most number of consumers and creates powerful change.
For example, you could have one personal experience as an activist, like an outreach conversation, or perhaps filming some pigs on a truck, and that could just stay with you. Or you could upload that footage online and potentially reach and influence tens or hundreds or thousands or even millions of other people.
And not only are you reaching consumers, but you're also reaching not active vegans and influencing them to get active and to create and share content.
So we don't have to wait for industry or governments or any other institution to change things. We are the ones we've been waiting for to create the change that's needed for animals and the planet.
Now, in order to use social media to its full effectiveness, we recommend playing the game smart and doing what works rather than what we would personally prefer. As activists, we would personally prefer to make every post hard-hitting and show graphic animal rights content. And this certainly works for many animal rights community and organisation pages.
And yet, we've noticed that the same approach for smaller personal accounts might not be as effective. They are likely to limit their audience to other activists and less likely to attract and maintain non-vegans and non-active vegans on their page.
What we've found to be more effective is to create a balanced page. We need to show people that vegans, especially activists, are just normal, balanced people.
So as normal, balanced people, it's important to show different sides of ourselves, sides that have nothing to do with activism or even veganism. Show yourself having fun and post about different topics like movies and sport and music, anything you like.
And then also post the hard-hitting animal rights content so that when someone is scrolling through your page, they're more likely to stay on your page and absorb the animal rights content you want them to, rather than not looking at all or unfollowing. Again, let's play the game smart.
Still focusing on using social media, one of the best tips we can offer is to include yourself, your face, in your posts. Now, we know that many vegans don't like to do this, especially at a vigil, for example. It's quite awkward because it's not exactly a selfie moment. And it's not about us. It is about the animals, of course. However, we need to be realistic. And the reality is that most people like to look at other people. So we have to use ourselves as a bridge between our audience and the animals. The reality is that when we post a picture of animals, for example, it gets very little engagement or attention. But if we put ourselves in that same post, it gets so much more attention and engagement. So using ourselves as that bridge, we are bringing the story of the animals directly to our audience. It's important to think of yourself, I guess, as a storyteller. So when you're at a vigil, take your phone, flip the camera and film yourself perhaps standing in front of the trucks with the animals on the trucks or at a farm, wherever you are, and speak directly to your audience, telling them what you see, how you feel, what the animals are doing, how it smells. Make that experience very real for your audience. Bring them there. Use yourself. The reality is that most people will scroll right past images of sad animals on the internet because there are so many images of sad animals on the internet, unfortunately. But they are more likely to stop, pause, and read that post if they see you, a familiar face. Remember, they are following your account for you, so use yourself. Again, you need to play the game smart and do what's most effective to get the best results for the animals.
Another reason why vigils are so powerful is that they hit the sweet spot with many non-vegans. Now, what we mean by this is that slaughterhouse footage often causes many non-vegans to look away. They don't want to see the blood, they don't want to see the slaughter.
However, showing the animals at their worst on farms or on transport trucks just before entering the slaughterhouse is not quite graphic enough to cause many non-vegans to look away. So they're more likely to spend a few more seconds reading or watching your post.
And yet, seeing the animals in a terrible state before they enter the slaughterhouse is bad enough to help many non-vegans make a connection, feel compassion, and reconsider who they are eating.
Now, we can try to create the social change we want by trying to change the individuals in society one by one. And yet, if we rely solely on this approach to activism, it's simply going to take too long to change society's dominant ideologies of speciesism and carnism.
Therefore, we also need to do activism that focuses on creating faster social change. And this is where non-violent direct action comes into play. Now, many years ago, when we first saw direct action, we questioned, is it effective or is it actually counterproductive and harming the movement? More on this in a moment.
Here in Israel, you have two powerful groups leading direct action: Total Liberation Israel and Glass Walls. At a more global level, the organisation Direct Action Everywhere, or DXE, has popularised direct action in the animal rights movement.
There are many different forms of direct action, and yet the principle of these actions is the same: to disrupt a place of animal exploitation. As DXE co-founder Hsiung explains in his talk, The Science of Social Change, The best scholar on the issue of disruption is Emeritus Professor of Political Science and Sociology at Cornell University, Sydney Tarot.
He's written multiple books on social movements, and in studying dozens of movements throughout human history, says, because disruption spreads uncertainty and gives weak actors leverage against powerful opponents, it is the strongest weapon of social movements.
In other words, as a tiny minority of an already tiny vegan minority, animal rights activists are weak actors when compared to the immensely wealthy and powerful animal exploiting industries. And yet, disruption is like our slingshot in this David versus Goliath battle.
So not only is disruption not counterproductive, but in fact it is our strongest weapon. According to Professor Tarot, disruption works because of three main reasons.
Number one, it provides evidence of determination on behalf of the movement. From our perspective, when people see activists taking radical action for animal rights and risking ridicule, and in some cases more, for our unpopular position, they can't help but think, even if only subconsciously, that we are definitely determined. This determination can also inspire other vegans to become activists. And it lets the animal exploiting industries know that we will not stop until every animal is free.
Reason number two, it obstructs routines and forces attention to an issue. We've been routinely exploiting animals in so many ways for so long that they aren't even considered victims, and animal rights isn't even considered an issue. Instead of seeing these sentient beings as individuals, we have commodified them to such a degree that they are called it, things, and food.
Now, because of this, non-violent direct action is necessary to force society to see that our routine and unconscious behaviour of eating, wearing and using animals actually is an issue, and that animals actually are victims.
Direct action brings to light the negative piece. Negative peace is when there is the appearance of peace, but it is at the expense of the suffering of others. We have created a negative peace in our species as society where there is no tension around the issue of exploiting animals. If we are to create positive peace and win justice for animals, we must disrupt this negative peace and create tension around the issue of animal exploitation.
Martin Luther King Jr. wrote that the goal of non-violent direct action is that it seeks to create such a crisis and foster such a tension that a community which has constantly refused to negotiate is forced to confront the issue. It seeks so to dramatise the issue that it can no longer be ignored.
It broadens the circle of debate beyond the marginal populations that are concerned about the issue currently.
In order to accelerate the social change that we want to see, we must force the debate about animal rights, not just at the individual level, but also at the societal level. And we must force the issue because, as Hsiung says, we know we can win the debate.
All social justice movements have used a combination of different types of activism to bring about social change, including non-violent direct action.
Political scientist Erica Chenoweth's research on hundreds of previous social justice movements revealed what she calls the rule of 3.5%, whereby whenever 3.5% of a population were engaged in sustained, non-violent, direct action, that movement won every single time.
Now, around 3.5% or more of places like Israel, the United States, United Kingdom, Australia, Canada and Germany are already vegan. However, none of them are vegan nations yet, because not all of the 3.5% of their respective vegan populations are engaged in sustained, non-violent direct action.
In fact, it's estimated that only around 1% of vegans are activists, and even less than 1% are engaged in sustained, non-violent direct action. The solution to this is for every single person here to make sure that they are active for animals, and more specifically involved in sustained non-violent direct action, and to encourage and inspire other people to also take part in non-violent direct action. Because if vegans don't take direct action for animals, who will?
We'd like to share with you some examples of just how powerful non-violent direct action can be. In August 2018, around 10,000 vegans, us included, marched in London at the official Animal Rights March, and yet it received absolutely no mainstream media coverage. Why?
Number one, because police were advised of the planned route ahead of time, and therefore the disruption to traffic was expected. 2, the action was legal.
And 3, because it was expected and legal, it didn't fit the mainstream media's narrative of depicting vegans and animal rights activists as militant and extreme.
However, the following few examples of non-violent direct actions in 2018 all received mainstream national and in some cases international media coverage because they were illegal and or unexpected, and therefore they did fit the mainstream media's vegan extremist narrative.
In January, 35 activists disrupted a steakhouse in Melbourne, Australia. In April, 34 activists refused to leave an industrial pig farm on the Sunshine Coast of Australia. In May, 40 activists were arrested for attempting to re-enter an industrial egg farm in Petaluma, California, from which they had just liberated 36 hens in broad daylight.
In September, 23 activists climbed onto the roof of a slaughterhouse in Adelaide, South Australia to perform a sit-in, and they stopped the slaughterhouse operating that day. In December, 70 activists took part in a weekend of disruptions at SeaWorld and other places of animal exploiting entertainment on the Gold Coast of Australia. 8 were arrested, some were charged. And most recently, 75 activists in Barcelona, Spain, took direct action at a pig farm.
As Martin Luther King Jr. said, one has a moral responsibility to disobey unjust laws. In all of these examples, a relatively small group of number of activists disobeying unjust laws and taking non-violent direct action were able to get the media coverage that 10,000 vegans marching legally and expectedly could not.
This is a great example of anthropologist Margaret Mead's quote, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has."
Now, can you imagine how much faster we could achieve animal liberation if 10,000 activists took part in non-violent direct action? It may seem impossible, and yet, during the civil rights movement in the 1960s, it only took 4 civil rights activists to inspire 100,000 activists to perform sittings. And they didn't even have social media.
Keep in mind that not all direct action needs to be illegal. There are many different forms of direct action, and a lot of it is legal, and that's what we usually take part in. For example, walkthroughs in shopping centres holding signs showing animal exploitation, restaurant and food court disruptions, and supermarket disruptions in front of the meat case. And often, even the illegal disruptions have a support team of activists who are also disrupting, but in a legal way. And it's important to know that civil resistance is recognised as a fundamental human right under international law.
When activists take part in direct action, which is perceived as radical by many, it has the potential to boost participation in more moderate activism. This is called the radical flank effect. For example, when not active vegans see activists taking part in direct action, like blocking the kill chute in a slaughterhouse, suddenly the idea of holding a screen showing slaughterhouse footage at a demonstration seems a lot less daunting and seems like something they can now see themselves as doing.
Whereas without the relativity provided by direct action, many vegans may still have considered participating in a cube of truth or a vigil as too extreme. Similarly, the non-vegan public may also view cubes and vigils as moderate activism which they can warm to relative to more radical direct actions. So the radical flank effect can help to normalise activism for both vegans and non-vegans.
As with many other social justice movements, there is a lot of drama, conflict, division, negativity and criticism within the animal rights movement.
Yes, a certain degree of constructive criticism is healthy. And yet, we can argue endlessly about what is the best method, strategy, approach, action, style, etc. And yet there is no single best way, because if there was, everyone would already be using it and we'd already have animal liberation and a vegan world.
Basically, different styles and approaches will appeal to different people. That's why we have the expression, different strokes for different folks.
Therefore, in our opinion, rather than tearing down how someone else is advocating or taking action for animals, our limited and precious time is better spent advocating and taking action to end speciesism in any way we each think is most effective.
If you think something should be done differently, then just do it. If you think something could be done better, then just do it.
And the level of dedication and commitment to action that we've seen firsthand from activists all around the world is a huge source of inspiration and hope to us. We've had both the honour and privilege of working with and observing so many good people, including several families with very young children, working tirelessly for and committed to the animals and each other as activists.
And it is precisely this level of dedication and commitment to action that we need to sustain and build upon if we are to achieve animal liberation.
Yes, animal rights activism is primarily for the animals and the planet, and yet it helps us as individuals.
Activism is empowering. It helps vegans to feel like they're doing more than just not contributing to the exploitation of and violence towards animals. They are literally taking action to help change things, and it counters the feeling of helplessness and despair that many vegans feel overwhelmed by. We're inspired by the words, "I am no longer accepting the things I cannot change. I am changing the things I cannot accept."
Activism is also an antidote to what vegan psychologist Claire Mann has coined dystopia, a vegan's anguish living in a non-vegan world. If you're worried that you might lose some friends becoming an activist, remember, you'll gain an entire worldwide activist family.
And we are all the early adopters of animal rights activism, and it's our role to influence the early majority to join us, and then the late majority will follow them.
If we look at other social justice movements, the pioneers and early adopters like Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks and Cesar Chavez were not so admired by everyone in their time, but we can now see that those activists were right. So, resistance is to be expected. Remember, as Gandhi said, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win.
Right now, we're in a battle with industry for popular opinion, and it is a battle we cannot afford to lose. We must act now to win the hearts and minds of the non-vegan early majority, so that if industry uses force against activists, we will have the sympathy of the non-vegan early majority and they will side with us.
We encourage vegans and vegan activists alike to learn to embrace the resistance or to love the hate, because it's a sign that we're being effective, that we're not just in a vegan echo chamber and that we're pushing the envelope. And when the hate becomes overwhelming, remember that the wind blows the hardest the closer you get to the mountaintop.
Ultimately, we're not not here to simply rock the boat. We're here to sink it. And sink it we must if we are to uproot our culture's evil, dominant ideologies of speciesism and carnism and achieve total liberation for our non-human animal cousins.
We were once asked what we thought was the worst thing that a vegan could say that would not be good for veganism. Our honest answer? The worst thing a vegan could say is nothing at all. As long as your message is to end speciesism, it doesn't matter how you speak up or take action for animals. Just make sure you do speak up and take action for animals.
Because trillions of animals are relying on us. They are innocent, defenceless, vulnerable beings who aren't able to fight for their own rights. We have their lives in our hands, and if we don't help them, they have no chance of escaping hell.
Whenever we feel overwhelmed by what happens to animals and question if this horror will ever end, we find strength in the words of Nelson Mandela. It always seems impossible until it is done.
And remember that every beginning has an end. And this is the beginning of the end of the animal agriculture industry. We will rise together as a movement and let the animal oppressors know that what they do to animals is not okay, and it will never be okay.
But it's going to take each and every one of us to step up and take action for animals the same way we would want someone fighting for our lives if we were the victims.
And each one of us can do this. We must do this.
Because, as we always say, going vegan is not the most we can do.
It's the least we can do. Thank you.
עונות במשחק 7 ימים, דניאלה לונדון דקל. דניאלה היא מאיירת מופלאה.